Have you ever wondered what goes through the mind of a puppy left all alone, clutching the only friend he has, a worn-out stuffed toy while the world rushes by without a glance? Tonight, I invite you to step into a story that might change how you see the invisible souls around us. And before we unravel what happens next, tell me, where are you listening from right now? Drop your city or favorite listening spot in the comments below. Who knows? Your story might just cross paths with his. Now, lean in close and let's begin. Winter in the small town of Ashwood, Ohio, had a way of swallowing color. The sky was the flat gray of old newspaper, and a steady wind swept thin, brittle snow across the parking lot of Miller's Grocery, the only store for miles that stayed open past dark. The air carried the sharpness of ice and distant chimney smoke. It was the kind of day when people hurried with their collars up and faces down, eager to leave the cold behind. Among them, 13-year-old Lucas Reed trudged beside his mother, Ellen. Lucas had the narrow build of a boy still waiting for his growth spurt, a mess of light brown hair and thoughtful, watchful gray eyes. Shy by nature and sensitive to the moods of those around him, Lucas often found comfort in stories and long walks with his mom, though he rarely felt truly at ease with people his age. Recent months had been tough after his father's job moved them to Ashwood. Lucas found himself the new kid at school once again, and despite Ellen's best efforts, loneliness had become a familiar shadow. Ellen Reed was a woman in her early 40s, with strong hands, a kind, round face, and soft brown hair usually pulled into a practical ponytail. She managed the front desk at Ashwood's public library, a role she took pride in, known for her gentle patience with children and elderly patrons alike. Life had not always been easy, her husband's long hours, the moves, the worries about making ends meet, but Ellen faced each new challenge with a mixture of warmth and quiet resilience. That Saturday afternoon, as mother and son wheeled their groceries toward the old Ford sedan, Lucas was the first to notice something odd: a shopping cart, not far from the edge of the lot, positioned at an awkward angle where no one ever left them. The wind rattled its metal frame. Inside, tangled up in a worn blanket, was a tiny figure shivering against the cold. Lucas stopped, the plastic bag in his hand, forgotten. "Mom," he said softly, his breath ghosting in the air. "Look over there." Ellen followed his gaze, concern flickering across her face. Together, they approached the cart. The closer they got, the more details emerged. Nestled inside was a Labrador puppy, probably no more than 3 months old. His fur, a soft yellow-white, that should have gleamed in the sunlight, but was instead matted and dirty. The puppy was small, too thin for his breed, ribs faintly visible beneath the fluff. He pressed himself into the far corner of the cart, almost disappearing into the folds of the blanket, big brown eyes darting between Lucas and Ellen with a mix of fear and longing. In his mouth, he held a battered stuffed bear, one button eye missing, its fur worn down to patches of cloth. Lucas felt his chest tighten. There was something unbearably familiar in the way the puppy clung to the toy, the way he seemed to wait, silently pleading for someone to return. For a moment, Lucas was back at his old school, standing at the edge of a group that never noticed him, clutching his backpack like a lifeline. He remembered the sting of feeling invisible, wishing someone would notice, would choose him. "Hey, buddy," Lucas whispered, crouching low so he wouldn't look so big or threatening. His voice was gentle, meant for secrets and scared things. The puppy flinched, but did not run. His eyes fixed on Lucas, measuring him with a wisdom far too old for a creature so young. Ellen knelt beside her son, her heart aching for the little animal. She scanned the cart. No collar, no note, nothing to say who had left him there or why. The parking lot was busy, but as Lucas looked around, he saw people glance their way, then quickly look away. No one wanted to get involved. A woman in a red coat steered her daughter away from the scene, the little girl peering back in curiosity, but her mother shook her head and hurried her along. Lucas's cheeks burned. It wasn't fair, he thought. that kindness could be so rare. The wind picked up, and the puppy shivered harder. Ellen shrugged out of her scarf and laid it in the cart, trying to make him more comfortable. "He must be freezing," she murmured. "But he's so young. Someone had to bring him here and just leave him?" She bit her lip, looking from the puppy to her son. Lucas's eyes never left the small, trembling dog. "Can we take him home?" he asked, voice trembling with hope and fear all at once. "Just until we find out where he belongs?" Ellen hesitated, her gaze moving from the puppy to Lucas, weighing responsibility against compassion. She remembered Lucas's rough year, his struggle to find friends, his quiet longing for connection. Maybe, she thought, they both needed this. "All right," she said finally, "but we need to check with the shelter and put up signs. He might have a family looking for him." Lucas nodded eagerly, promising anything she asked, already reaching into the cart with slow, careful movements. At first, the puppy drew back, pressing the stuffed bear closer to his chest. Lucas spoke softly, coaxing, and after a few tense moments, the puppy inched forward, curiosity warring with fear. When Lucas gently stroked his head, the puppy closed his eyes, as if surrendering. Ellen helped lift him from the cart, wrapping him in her coat, and Lucas held the stuffed bear so it wouldn't be left behind. The puppy didn't struggle. He seemed to know, somehow, that he was safe now, if only for a moment. As they settled the puppy in the back seat of the car, Lucas looked back one last time at the lonely shopping cart and the people hurrying past. He felt a strange mix of joy and sadness, a quiet knowing that sometimes the world was cold and hard, but there was still room for small kindnesses. The drive home was silent. The puppy curled up on Ellen's lap, clutching his battered bear. Lucas watched him in the mirror, already thinking of names and the promise of tomorrow. In the warmth of the car, surrounded by the gentle hum of the engine and his mother's steady presence, Lucas let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. Charlie, as Lucas decided to name him, spent his first night in the Reed home curled tight in a small basket lined with a faded green blanket. The old stuffed bear, which had become Charlie's lifeline, never left his side knot even for a moment. The Reeds lived in a modest, two-story house with pale blue siding, perched at the end of Sycamore Lane, where winter seemed to press in from all sides. Inside, warmth from the baseboard heaters did its best to fight off the chill that clung to the windows. Charlie, however, could not yet feel that warmth. His world was still ruled by caution and fear. The first evening, Ellen set out a shallow bowl of water and a plate with a little boiled chicken, hoping to tempt him to eat, but Charlie only glanced at the food before huddling deeper into his blanket, eyes never straying far from Lucas or Ellen. Ellen tried her best to appear non-threatening, speaking softly, moving slowly, and avoiding direct eye contact, remembering a book she once read about shy animals at the library. She was a woman who believed in patience and gentle words, shaped by years of listening to children's worries and the gentle rhythms of library life. Lucas, meanwhile, took it upon himself to be Charlie's main comfort. The boy made a small bed for himself on the floor next to Charlie's basket that first night, not wanting the puppy to feel alone in a strange place. Lucas was careful to keep his movements slow and his voice low, offering his hand for Charlie to sniff but never forcing contact. When Lucas's father, Richard Reed, came home late that evening, tall man with dark hair and tired eyes, a construction foreman known for his hard work and quiet demeanor, he paused at the door, watching his wife and son together on the floor with the little dog. Richard was a man of few words, shaped by the fatigue of long days and a lifetime of doing what was needed rather than what was easy. But seeing Lucas's hopeful gaze, he managed to smile and nodded his approval. He recognized, perhaps better than most, the importance of second chances. The night was restless for everyone. Whenever the furnace rattled or a truck rumbled past on the distant road, Charlie would tense, ears pricked, eyes wide. Once or twice, he let out a soft, uncertain whimper, and each time, Lucas would reach out, letting his fingers rest near the basket until Charlie could see that he was not alone. In those early hours, Lucas promised himself that no matter what happened, he would never let Charlie feel abandoned again. Morning arrived with a pale sun barely piercing the thick clouds. Lucas awoke to find Charlie still in his basket, the stuffed bear tucked between his paws. Lucas greeted him softly and set out to start their routine. Over the next days, the process of trust grew in fits and starts. Charlie would not eat if anyone was watching, so Ellen and Lucas learned to leave the kitchen and wait. When they returned, the food would be gone, the bowl licked clean, but Charlie would immediately retreat to his bed, clutching his bear as if he had done something wrong. It took nearly a week before Charlie dared eat a meal with Lucas sitting a few feet away, reading quietly from a battered copy of Call of the Wild. Gradually, Charlie began to follow Lucas around the house, never too close, always with the bear in tow. Lucas spent hours sitting near the puppy, building little towers of blocks, drawing pictures, or simply reading aloud, his calm presence a gentle invitation to trust. Once, when Lucas left his drawing pad on the rug, Charlie inched over and nudged it with his nose, leaving a smudge of paw print as his own quiet signature. Ellen watched all of this with a mother's pride and a librarian's sense of quiet awe. It was Ellen who first noticed how Charlie responded to the world. Every sudden sound-a-pot dropped in the kitchen, a neighbor's car door slamming sent him scurrying to the darkest corner he could find, his body trembling, his eyes fixed on the door. Even the ringing of the phone made him flinch. Ellen suspected that Charlie had not only been abandoned, but perhaps also frightened or mishandled before. She mentioned this to Dr. Morgan, the town veterinarian, during a quick phone call to schedule a checkup. Morgan was a gentleman in his late 50s, round-bellied and soft-voiced, known for his kindness to both animals and people. He promised to take things slow when Charlie came in. As the days passed, Lucas began to see the first small signs of trust. One afternoon, after returning home from school, he found Charlie waiting by the door, bear in mouth, tail thumping hesitantly against the floor. That evening, as Lucas lay on the floor sketching superheroes in his notebook, Charlie padded over and set the stuffed bear gently next to him, then sat down, gazing up as if waiting for approval. Lucas's heart leaped. He reached out his hand, and this time, Charlie didn't shrink away. Instead, the puppy leaned forward, giving Lucas's fingers a shy, wet lick. It was a gesture more valuable than any words, a sign that the ice was beginning to thaw. Night by night, the routine became a comfort to them both. Lucas would tuck Charlie in with his blanket, offer the bear, and settle himself on the floor beside the basket, sometimes drifting off to the sound of the puppy's soft breathing. Charlie would wake occasionally, ears perked for trouble, but always calmed when he saw Lucas nearby. Even Richard, quietly at first, started to slip the puppy a treat from his pocket as he left for work each morning, an unspoken welcome into the Reed family. Charlie's wariness did not disappear overnight. Each time a visitor knocked at the door or a strange voice echoed through the house, the puppy's gaze would dart toward the exit, as if calculating escape. Yet with every passing day, his trust grew. The little Labrador, once left alone in the cold with only a battered bear for company, was beginning to understand the meaning of hominot, just warmth and shelter, but the gentle, patient love of a family who chose to stay. As winter slowly lost its grip on Ashwood and the snow began to recede into sooty heaps along the sidewalks, Lucas felt his world brightening, if only a little. Each morning, golden light filtered through his bedroom blinds, and Charlie, the little Labrador with big, searching eyes and a heart that was finally learning to trust, had become his loyal shadow. Charlie followed Lucas from room to room, tail softly wagging, ears alert for the sound of his friend's footsteps. When Lucas sat at his desk to finish homework, Charlie would settle beneath his chair, head resting atop the now well-loved stuffed bear. In the evenings, the pair would curl up on the worn living room carpet, Lucas reading aloud stories about friendship and bravery while Charlie gazed up, sometimes as if he understood every word. Ellen and Richard, watching from a distance, shared quiet glances and smiles. It was clear to them how much Lucas had changed since Charlie's arrival. His laughter rang out more often, and the heaviness that had hung over him since moving to Ashwood seemed to be lifting. Richard even began taking short breaks from his paperwork in the evenings to throw a ball for Charlie, his deep chuckles filling the house whenever the puppy skidded across the floor, paws too big for his body, enthusiasm outpacing skill. One crisp Saturday, Ellen suggested they all visit the Ashwood Community Center for the monthly children's group. "It's for kids who need a little extra support," she explained as she handed Lucas's coat. "There'll be snacks, games, and Mrs. Beverly says everyone can bring their pets if they're gentle." Ellen herself planned to help out in the kitchen, while Richard agreed to come along and offer a hand setting up chairs. Lucas's pulse quickened with a mix of nerves and excitement. He wanted to show Charlie the world outside their safe little circle, though part of him feared the puppy might be overwhelmed. The community center was a low, cheerful building at the edge of town, surrounded by patches of lingering snow and early crocuses pushing up from the thawing earth. Inside, the main room was strung with paper lanterns and filled with the noise of children and the occasional bark or meow. Mrs. Beverly Palmer, the organizer, greeted everyone with her usual warmth. She was a tall, elegant woman in her late 50s with silver hair cut into a neat bob and a bright blue cardigan that seemed to match her sparkling eyes. Beverly had spent most of her life as a schoolteacher and now poured her energy into community work, always able to spot a nervous child in a crowd and coax a smile from even the shyest. As Lucas entered, Charlie pressed close to his leg, nose twitching with curiosity and a trace of anxiety. Beverly knelt down to greet him, her hands gentle and steady. "Well, aren't you handsome?" she murmured, letting Charlie sniff her fingers. "Welcome to our little circus." Lucas managed a shy smile and murmured a thank you. Most of the children were younger than Lucas' own, running circles around the snack table, others seated quietly with books or coloring pages. In a corner near the window sat a boy about 9 or 10, thin and pale, with tightly curled dark hair and deep brown eyes fixed on the floor. His name was Aiden Carter. Lucas recognized him from school, a child who rarely spoke, never joined in at recess, and seemed to carry a wall of invisible glass between himself and the world. His mother, Melissa Carter, was nearby, a tired woman with gentle hands and a hopeful expression. Melissa greeted Ellen with a soft smile, quietly explaining, "Aiden sometimes has a hard time with noise. He likes to watch, though. I'm grateful you all brought your dog. He's always loved animals." The room bustled with laughter and games. Lucas found a spot on the floor, Charlie at his side, and watched as Aiden remained motionless, shoulders hunched. Lucas wanted to approach, but something in Aiden's posture warned him not to intrude. Instead, he stayed where he was, softly stroking Charlie's fur, talking about little things. Showed Charlie loved his bear, how he liked chasing sunlight across the floor. It wasn't long before Charlie's eyes flicked toward Aiden. The puppy hesitated, then picked up his stuffed bear and, with a cautious step, crossed the room. Everyone nearby fell quiet, watching. Charlie stopped a few feet from Aiden and lay down, bear in his mouth. He inched closer, then set the toy gently at Aiden's feet. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Aiden's hands clenched his knees, his gaze darting to the bear, then to Charlie, then back again. Lucas held his breath. Charlie lowered his head, stretching out beside the boy, his body perfectly still. Slowly, as if afraid the moment would vanish, Aiden reached out. His fingers trembled as they closed around the worn bear. He didn't speak, but his eyes filled with tearsome mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and something like hope. He pressed the bear to his chest. Charlie, sensing the fragile acceptance, inched a bit closer until his fur brushed against Aiden's leg. The room remained hushed, every adult present understanding they were witnessing something rare. Even Melissa covered her mouth, her eyes shining with sudden, fierce love for her son and gratitude to the little dog who had broken through. Lucas felt a rush of pride and humility all at once. Charlie wasn't just his dog. He was a bridge, a healer in ways Lucas had never imagined. For the rest of the afternoon, Aiden kept the bear close, and Charlie stayed at his side, occasionally licking the boy's hand or rolling onto his back with an invitation to play. The spell was not broken, but rather deepened as laughter and play resumed. Lucas found himself surrounded by new friends, invited into games and stories he'd once only watched from afar. By the end of the day, Melissa hugged Ellen and whispered, "Thank you for bringing your son and your dog. This meant more to us than you know." When it was time to go, Aiden carefully returned the bear to Charlie, a silent promise passing between them. Lucas hugged his dog, his heart brimming with gratitude. As they left the center, and the cold air bit at their cheeks, Lucas understood. Sometimes the most fragile threads between a boy and his puppy, between two children, are the ones that bind the world together. The weeks after that afternoon at the community center passed in a kind of gentle blur, as if the world around the Reed family had subtly shifted into a softer, kinder place. Spring sunlight began to fill the windows of their home, brightening the faded wallpaper and bringing with it a new warmth not just to the rooms, but to the hearts inside them. Words spread quickly through Ashwood about the little Labrador puppy who had reached Aiden Carter when no one else could. Every Saturday, more families came to the community center, some bringing shy children who had never before dared to join group activities, some bringing dogs or cats with tentative hopes of gentle magic repeating itself. Charlie, still only a few months old but with eyes that seemed to see everything, became a fixture at these gatherings. He grew a bit bigger each week, his coat shining gold in the sunlight, legs slightly awkward but spirit unbreakable. Lucas made sure to brush Charlie's fur before each visit, smoothing out any tangles and checking that the battered, stuffed bear now patched at the seams by Ellen's careful hands was ready to go. At first, Lucas worried that Charlie might grow too attached to the toy or become possessive, but those fears faded as Charlie made a habit of carrying the bear from child to child, offering it as a token of peace. Sometimes Charlie would drop it in the lap of a girl who sat quietly at the edge of the room, or leave it at the feet of a boy who was slow to join the others, always with a patient look as if to say, "I'll be here when you're ready." At home, the changes in Lucas were unmistakable. He had always been a thoughtful, inward child, hesitant to raise his voice or assert himself, but now he moved through life with a quiet confidence. Ellen noticed how her son's laughter came easier, how he took more interest in his schoolwork and chores, and how, when someone at school was teased or left out, Lucas was often the first to stand beside them, offering friendship as readily as Charlie offered his bear. Richard, too, became more engaged. He looked forward to the weekends, helping set up at the community center or repairing broken toys that found their way into the lost and found. There was a new ease in his voice, a new patience in his manner, perhaps, Ellen thought, because healing a dog had helped them all begin to heal each other. For Aiden, the change was slow but remarkable. His mother, Melissa, began to bring him more regularly, sometimes coaxing him out with the promise of seeing Charlie. Aiden started sitting closer to the other children, sometimes even raising his hand when Mrs. Beverly asked a question. He and Lucas formed a quiet friendship, one that didn't need many words. Lucas learned that Aiden loved trains, that he knew the names of every engine and caboose, and that he liked to draw long, winding railroad tracks with colored pencils. One afternoon, Lucas brought him a new sketchbook and a set of markers as a gift, watching Aiden's face light up in surprise. Mrs. Beverly Palmer, always present with her bright cardigans and sharp, loving eyes, started a new project. She encouraged the children to make cards and drawings for patients at the Ashwood Care Home, a place for elderly residents who rarely received visitors. The group voted unanimously to let Charlie deliver the first envelope. Lucas watched as Charlie, wearing a little bandana Ellen had sewn just for him, trotted solemnly down the hallway of the care home, stuffed bear dangling from his mouth, causing even the gruffest old men to break into wide grins. One resident, Mrs. Blank, Hattie Danielle's a spry woman in her 80s with snowy hair and a booming laugh, asked if Charlie could sit by her window while she read her favorite mystery novel. "He listens better than most people I know," she joked, her wrinkled hand stroking Charlie's head. Back at home, the Reed family settled into new routines. On sunny afternoons, Lucas and Charlie would walk to the park, sometimes joined by Aiden and Melissa. Lucas began to share stories from his old home, the city they'd left behind, and found that memories didn't hurt so much when told to friends. Ellen started inviting other families over for weekend potlucks, the house full of laughter, voices, and the clatter of dishes. Richard, seeing how much these gatherings meant, took to baking bread his sourdough, quickly becoming a favorite in the neighborhood. One evening, as Lucas lay in bed with Charlie curled at his feet, he realized he no longer dreaded the mornings. The ache of loneliness that had once haunted him after every move, every loss, had faded into something softer, something more like hope. He remembered the first time he saw Charlie in that cold shopping cart, and felt grateful for the chain of small kindnesses that had brought them both here. At the next community center gathering, a new child arrived, a girl named Harper Green, with auburn hair and freckles, who had recently lost her father and rarely spoke. She clung to her mother, anxious, until Charlie padded over and dropped the bear at her feet. Harper bent down, whispered something only Charlie could hear, and hugged the toy to her chest. Lucas glanced at Aiden, who smiled and nodded as if to say, "I know how that feels." By the end of spring, the once lonely Labrador puppy had become a gentle symbol of hope for a growing circle of friends' children, parents, and elders alike. The Reed family, once just 3 people weathering the world together, now stood at the heart of a network of kindness, every connection woven by a puppy's quiet courage, and a boy's unwavering belief that even the smallest acts of care could change a life. The final days of winter came softly to Ashwood, blanketing the town in a hush that felt gentler than the biting cold of months past. By now, the Reed house had become a hub of quiet joy and gentle commotion. Charlie, no longer the fragile, trembling puppy from the shopping cart, had grown into a sturdy young doggies, golden fur thick and glossy, his paws finally seeming to fit his body. Still, there was an innocence in his face, a certain sweetness that never faded, and the old stuffed bear, though patched and frayed, remained his favorite possession. For Lucas, the transformation of his canine companion mirrored a change inside himself. He was more confident now, shoulders straighter, voice stronger. The loneliness that had once weighed him down felt like a memory, replaced by a sense of belonging that stretched beyond the walls of his home. Lucas's friendship with Aiden Carter had blossomed, rooted in quiet understanding. Aiden, now a regular visitor, would come over on weekends, sometimes with his mother, Melissa, who always brought homemade oatmeal cookies and a patient smile. Melissa, a woman in her late 30s with soft brown eyes and a gentle, reserved manner, seemed grateful for the friendship her son had found, often staying for tea and sharing stories about their own journey to Ashwood after a difficult divorce. Aiden, whose speech was still sparse but whose laughter had become more frequent, loved to sit on the back porch with Lucas and Charlie, drawing trains and telling stories about imaginary journeys across the country. The neighborhood had also grown closer. Harper Green, the red-haired girl with freckles who had once clung to her mother, now ran barefoot through the yard with Lucas, Aiden, and Charlie, her laugh ringing out like bells. Richard Reed, Lucas's father, started inviting other parents over for weekend breakfast cheese, once private nature warming, as he saw how much these connections meant to his family. Ellen, always the quiet center, orchestrated potlucks and library reading circles, her heart swelling with pride as she watched Lucas read aloud to younger children. Charlie curled faithfully at his feet. One Sunday morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds, scattering golden light across the park where families gathered for the first picnic of spring. Lucas tossed a frisbee for Charlie, who leapt and twisted in the air, his movements a blur of joyful energy. Harper and Aiden cheered, taking turns chasing after the dog, their faces flushed with excitement. At one point, Charlie trotted over to Aiden and dropped the battered stuffed bear at his feet, as if passing a torch of courage. Aiden grinned, holding the bear close, and for a moment it was as if all the hurt and fear of the past had been swept away by sunlight and laughter. Adults lingered in small groups, sharing stories and recipes, their children weaving around them in a tapestry of motion. Melissa watched Aiden with misty eyes, whispering her gratitude to Ellen. Harper's mother, a lively woman named Grace, commented on how much Charlie had changed the neighborhood, bringing children together who might never have met. Even Mr. Bryant, the stern retiree from next door with his gray beard and bristly eyebrows, stopped by to slip Charlie a biscuit and offer Lucas a rare, approving nod. As the afternoon faded, Lucas, Aiden, and Harper sprawled on the grass. Charlie nestled between them, the old bear pillowed beneath his chin. Lucas gazed at the puppy who had changed his world, stroking Charlie's silky ears. He thought of that first cold day in the parking lot, the hopeless eyes, the trembling body, the desperate grip on a single toy. He remembered his own longing for friendship, the way he'd wished to be seen and chosen. Now, as laughter floated on the breeze and warmth seeped into the earth, Lucas understood something simple and profound. Love, when given freely, multiplies and heals. A puppy abandoned in winter had become the heart of a family, the light in a circle of friends, a symbol of hope for anyone who needed a second chance. The story of Charlie, the little Labrador, spread quietly through Ashwood and beyond. People who heard it found themselves pausing when they saw a lost animal, or reaching out to someone alone on the playground, or simply choosing kindness over indifference. For Lucas, the lesson was woven into the fabric of every day, that opening your heart even when it hurts is always worth the risk. As dusk settled over the park, and families packed up their blankets and baskets, Lucas leaned against his mother, Charlie's soft breathing a comfort at his side. He closed his eyes, letting the peace of the moment soak in, and whispered a thank you to fate, to kindness, and to the little dog who had waited so patiently to be loved. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can transform not just one life, but many. When you choose to open your heart to someone or something left behind, you become part of their healing, and they become part of yours. Even those who have been abandoned or forgotten are still worthy of love, and a single moment of compassion can be the beginning of hope for everyone involved. If this story touched you, take a moment to look around in your own life. Is there someone or some little soul waiting for a second chance? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that warm the heart. You never know whose life you might change by simply choosing to care.